Join me in John chapter 8, please, this morning. 8th chapter of the Gospel of John. I don't think you need me to inform you the world's gone crazy. It's gone mad, absolutely mad. Madness is the only explanation for the insanity. It's madness for what you've seen with regard to gender. The attack on manhood has been happening for a long time here. I've been fighting that thing, trying to encourage men to be men. And men have been largely repulsed by the church, as the church is generally such a woman thing. It's so femmed out. The Christian man, for a long time, has been told he's supposed to just be tame, nice. I've been contending for men and for manhood for a long time, but now the attack has become incredibly aggressive against womanhood, as if it doesn't exist. These people have gone insane. We have men representing our nation as high-ranking officials in dresses. And it's not Colonel Klinger anymore. What's his name? Klinger from the... I'm confusing Colonel Klink with Klinger. But still, that was a joke once. It's still a joke. Except they're taking it serious. So in light of that, I want to address a couple of things this morning. Among those things I'd like to address with you, the distinctions between men and women, they're great, they're God's doing. I've done that fairly effectively, and probably a lot of you men have heard me before. I believe that what God did in Genesis chapter 2 is he took one man made in his image, one man, Adam, made in his likeness. He imparted his likeness to this one man, put that man into a deep sleep, and tore him into two people. Literally. I make much of what God did not do when it came time to make Eve. That Yahweh did not repeat what is written in Genesis 2:7, where it says, and the Lord God formed the man, the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. God did not do that to create woman. Why? Because she was already there. She was already there. She was already half of who Adam was. She was already the other half of the very image of God imparted to him. God extracted. God divided those two people from one. And he did it in such a way that those two could become one, again, complete each other, complementing one another, making up what the other doesn't have. No, it's the truth. And Pastor Chuck used to say it. You wonder what's up with men. The fact is, the man is not all there. Man's not all there. No, there was a lot extracted from him. And as I have been saying for decades to this movement, to men, you don't have a feminine side to get in touch with. People telling you to get in touch with your feminine side are foolish. You don't have a feminine side. It was removed. It was surgically extracted and turned to woman. The madness is only explained in light of the warnings that God gave to the covenant people through Moses. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, God told Moses to tell them, violate this covenant. And among other things, he said, I will smite you with madness, blindness, and astonishment of heart. We have witnessed it. The madness that God warned we'd be smitten by is what we are now surrounded by. And men pretending, imagining themselves to be women, are abusing women in sports. The abuse has been going on for a long time, though, hasn't it, ladies? Let me just tell you today that I have a thesis I'll pitch to you. That in a sin-cursed world like the one that we live in, everybody suffers. Everybody has it bad. We all hurt. Women have it worse. As a matter of fact, I contend they hurt twice as much as men. Let me read you the text in John chapter 8. And I realize I'm loud. If this is new to you, hang in there. I apologize. It's going to be a bit shocking first thing in the morning. I know. John chapter 8, one of the best stories here, begins in verse 1. Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them. Scribes and the Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. This is going to sound like a trick question, but how many people does it take to commit adultery? Truthfully. If it's an actual act, it takes two. They say unto him, verse 4. Let me read verse 3 again. The scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now, Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? Now here's the setup. Beautiful scene. It is, after all, the temple of God. It is his Father's house. He has cleansed it. He has driven out everything that was in the way. He has welcomed the multitudes, and he's teaching them. There is the good shepherd, there, the flock. And into that beautiful scene comes a pack of wolves. Religious wolves, wolves in sheep's clothing. Predatory, they are. They come into that, bursting their way through, forcing their way into the midst where he is, to throw before him their prey, which they intend to use as bait to catch him, to drive a wedge between him and the masses, to drive a wedge between him and Moses. They think themselves quite clever. They think they are. They don't know who they're dealing with. But they have conspired. They thought this through. These guys put their collective intelligence together, stroking their gray beards. They plotted. They planned. They have noted in his teaching, much to their absolute contempt, that he would say things like, you have heard that it has been said, thou shalt not commit adultery, but I say unto you. They were outraged by this, quoting Moses, who actually was quoting God. Quoting Moses, following that up with, but I say unto you, whosoever looks on a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So they are outraged that he would dare quote Moses and then say, but I say. So they're doing this now. His enemies know enough about him to know that he is not going to want a woman executed. They've seen enough and heard enough of his mercy and his message that they know he's not going to want to see a woman stoned. For the record, this is a tough thing to talk about. No one, either in Scripture or in recorded history, was ever stoned, executed for committing adultery. Not because they never committed adultery, they certainly did. But the requirements of the law were such that you had to be an eyewitness. You had to be an eyewitness, and it couldn't be, you can testify that we saw them coming out of the same room. You could not have them condemned by saying, we saw them on the same piece of furniture. You could not even testify that you interpreted the actions under the fabric. This is gross, but this is the adult class, and I'll go no further. But you had to actually be able to say you were an eyewitness to the connection of two people into oneness. Nobody ever committed adultery in that manner, under those circumstances where it is a capital crime. Let me add to that. If you charge somebody with a capital crime and you're found to be a false witness, violating the law. The law requires that the penalty, which in this case would be capital, stoning, capital punishment, would be yours. The penalty you intended for the one you falsely accused would go to you. Now, knowing that, may I just point out to you just how incredibly creepy it is that they say to him, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. I can't believe they would admit that in public. That horrifies me, grosses me out. Bunch of gross old religious perverts. And yet, they say this woman. I ask you to consider how they said the word woman. I believe that you would be able to hear the contempt for womanhood that is in their heart. In their culture, they have not regarded the wonder of God's creation that is woman as they ought to. I submit to you, there was a difference between how they said, we caught this woman, and how the Son of God would say the word. Like he did in Luke chapter 7 when he says to Simon the Pharisee, Simon, I have something to say to you. And the Pharisee says, oh, say on, master. And the Lord said, the woman who just gave him a foot wash with her tears, dried his feet with her hair like a towel, and anointed his feet. He said, Simon, seest thou this woman? And the Lord said, woman. I believe it sang when he said the word woman. He is the one who deeply understands and appreciates truthfully the depth of what a woman is, because she's made in his image. Let me tell you something in case you don't know this. Christ is not like Adam, who was made in the image of God and then divided into two genders. Christ, our King, is the image of the invisible God. He was not divided into two genders. And everything that is of female to us on earth, everything that is of womanhood, came from him. It's his image you bear, my sisters. The softer side, kinder side. There is two sides to the very image of God, and I believe God isolates by creating Adam and parting his image and dividing him into two. In a very real sense, there's a sense in which the image of God is restored, where two people actually come together and complete one another. When they don't compete, but rather complete. When the striving ends and you finally find your place and you get in that groove and you grow together as a husband and a wife. Can I say one more thing? I mentioned yesterday to the fellas, there's nothing in between boy and man. You go from boyhood to manhood at your bar mitzvah, your rite of passage, your father informs you, you're a man now, you answer to God. Let me tell you another in between that does not exist. You might not like this one. I say it as your friend. There's nothing in between single and married. There is nothing in between single and married. If you're not married, you're still single. There is nothing in that relationship that grants you the rights of a husband or a wife. You're a fake, you're a fraud, you're practicing fraud. It is what the Old English Bible says is defrauding someone. If you are in a sexual relationship with somebody you're not married to, not like you can't be forgiven, but you better knock it off. Quit that, repent of it, marry up, be a man, and I gotta just tell you, the boyfriend, not in the book. If you are a boy friend, I recommend as your friend that you man up and become a husband. Boyfriend does not exist. So if you're a boyfriend and you're here today, you don't exist. I thought you'd like that. All the married people are applauding. Single people, recognize that until you are married, you have none of the rights, nor the responsibilities, except to keep yourself pure. You have none of the rights of a husband or a wife, none. None of the rights, none of the privileges, none of the duties or responsibilities. You are still single until you're married. But anyway, back to the subject. That's not really far off the subject, but I just want to tell you that God did something that marriage, in a very real sense, it was his invention. He made one into two because that one was alone. He tore him into two, and he's no longer alone. He's a helper. They complete each other. What is the purpose of man? God created us that we might actually know and glorify our Creator and enjoy him forever. We need help in that, and that is the whole purpose of marriage. All right, so in Eden, what happens? God creates. God is the one who created the distinctions of male and female, men and women. And nobody understands you better than the one who made you. And when he says woman, it was different than how they said woman. But they said, we caught this woman. This woman was taken in adultery in the very act. So where's the guy? Are we to believe that he was Israel's #1 track star? That he was so fast on his feet they couldn't catch him? Let me just tell you what I believe happened. The very fact that he's not there screams of entrapment, a setup. It screams to us that he was one of them, that it was a setup, that at some point or another, it is highly probable that in their conspiracy meetings, which they thought were very spiritual, they discussed how they needed to drive a wedge between him and Moses. And what they needed was a woman. Do any of you know that kind of woman? I'm sure that came up. Do any of you know that kind of woman that might be brought into this? And surely you all know there are vulnerable women in the world. You know, often other women identify them quickly. Other women, godly women, will even detect that sort of vulnerability and sometimes say, whoa, look at her, what a hussy. And I'm sure they've got less kind words than hussy, whatever hussy means. I've heard that one. And there are women who advertise their vulnerability. I am the son of such a woman. She was broken. She was a broken woman. Loved her much. Love her still. She's with the Lord now. But she was a woman so very broken by her own father's abuse. Fleeing that as a teenage girl, she ended up with my father, who picked up where her father left off. I saw my mother's blood as a little boy streaming down her face from the beatings she received from my father. It was horrible. I saw her pain. I'm an eyewitness to her suffering. And worse than what he did to her physically was her broken heart. He beat her, and she would stay there for those beatings. She would remain right there. But he left her, threw her away. And that hurt her worse than anything he'd done to her body. That broken woman believing the only thing that she had was her body, her womanness. She put it on display. It was the 70s, and she adopted as her theme Jeannie C. Riley's Harper Valley PTA, song about a woman confronting a school PTA in her miniskirt. That was my mom. That was her anthem, and she wanted to tell the world off, and she believed that she could find love this way. She kept trying. I'm an eyewitness to her suffering. I'm an eyewitness to her seeking and putting herself on display in a little rural town in Maine, where the predators became aware that there was nobody to defend her, nobody to protect her. They tuned into that. And my mother was gang raped in that little town by locals that she knew and could identify. She told me, her little boy, when I wanted to grow, I wanted to get big. I wanted to hunt them all down, every one of them. She wouldn't tell me who they were. I suspected who they were, and I believed that I was in school with their sons and daughters. It was a mess. It messed up my mind. But I'll tell you what came out of all of that horror is an awareness of just how different men and women are and how much they suffer Great as my pain was as a boy, it was nothing compared to the pain I witnessed my mother live and experience, and the pain of my sisters. And I became tuned into something that I would share with you. It is in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, and it is where God comes into the scene in calling to our parents who are hiding. Our first parents are, they're hiding in the fig leaf aprons that they wove together their own works. Conscious that those fig leaf aprons were inadequate, they continued to hide. They tried to wear all the leaves on all the trees of Eden. They hid. Yahweh calls to them. They come. He invites confession. That is his way. He lays out the gospel in a curse to the serpent. Genesis 3:15, the very first prophecy in the Bible, the very first mention of Christ. It's in the singular masculine pronoun that God pronounced to the serpent. One day, one very unique man would crush the head of the serpent, but would suffer to do it. Oh man, I wish I had time to preach Genesis 3:15. I could go loud. But I'm actually focused on Genesis 3:16 and 17. Let me point out to you, verse 16 of Genesis chapter 3, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow in thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. And I believe the Creator was saying this with a broken heart and with a cry in his voice. Now, he knew it was going to happen, but simply knowing something is going to happen doesn't take the hurt out of it. Many of you have been hurt. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you had your heart broken, and you could tell it was going to happen. You knew it was going to happen. It didn't hurt less because you knew it was going to. God said with a cry in his voice, sorrow. Some of the newer translations translated pain. Sorrow would be the character. That would be the trait that would really sort of summarize the sojourn of a woman. God said sorrow. This is not God saying to our mother Eve, I'm going to do this to you because of what you've done. Oh, no. This is God having to break to his creation what life is going to be like now, being how he made her. In this new arrangement, it's a recipe for deep pain. Let me point out to you in verse 17 that God said something similar to Adam. Unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. And thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread till thou return unto the ground. For out of it thou wast taken. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Now maybe I'm making much of it, but I don't think it's a coincidence. God used that word that he used for Adam, that we translate sorrow in the King James Version, or pain in the ESV or the LSB. Same word, only he used it twice when he spoke to our mother Eve. I maintain that it's bad on earth, and we all hurt. But my whole thesis is that women hurt twice as much. I'll give you 3 reasons why, and I think they're revealed to us here. You can take them or leave them, but I believe there are 3 very distinct reasons why women hurt more than men. In fact, I maintain twice as much. Number 1, you know this. Number 1, you ladies are physically weaker. I'm sure you know that. It's the reason why we have women's sports versus men's sports. You're physically weaker. The average man's body, by God's design, average man's body is about 40% muscle mass, 40%. The average woman's body is about 25%. You understand then the differential. Men have big muscles, women have little muscles. They are muscles, they're real, but they're little. It's true. A side note, I've made the observation that men and women deal differently with pain. Very differently, I'm sure you know this. There's two different kinds of pain though. There's external pain. Men are used to that. We cut fingers off and keep going. But we are wimps when it's internal. And there's internal pain, and ladies, you are champs on this stuff. You walk around with agony internally, smiling and being nice. To a degree. Men and women are different. 40% muscle mass versus 20% muscle mass. Take those numbers, I maintain you take those numbers, that differential, and reverse them when it comes to depth of emotion. When it comes to depth of emotion, I'm telling you, ladies, your feelings are enormous. Our man feelings, they're little. They're like your muscles. Man feelings aren't really worth talking about. The only big one we ever have is anger, because we have wars to fight and stuff. I believe I can make the case to you that woman is the weaker vessel. The married apostle, the apostle Peter tells us, 1 Peter chapter 3, that a man is commanded by God to honor the wife as the weaker vessel and heirs. But listen, it is not weaker like inferior. It's weaker like delicate, more easily broken. Fragile, yes, but expensive, priceless. You with me on this? It's not a diss. It's not Peter saying that women are wimps. It's Peter saying you've got to give honor unto the wife as unto the weaker. You honor the weaker. It's expensive. It's priceless. It's valuable, delicate, beautiful, easily broken. You guys know, physically speaking, men have got thick skin. You know that, right? I wear leather. My skin is all leathery, and my wife's skin is all silky. And it's not just the result of all the petroleums and all that stuff that there's products involved. Apart from that, I tell you, there's a difference between us. And men are thicker in their hide. We have, men, I guess you don't know this, ladies. Men have an oh well switch. You can just flip it. And just as a man determine, well, I'm not going to cry about that right now. I've got stuff to do. Maybe I never will. We have an oh well switch. We can actually choose to go. And it does help us. It equips us for trauma, for war, for rescue, times where, and I'm not saying you don't have one, but all men have one, and it can get stuck on too, and we don't feel anything. But I do believe, and I've said many times, when Adam came out of that deep sleep, God put him in, he knew he was not all there. I maintain that Adam knew he was altered. He went to sleep one way, he woke up another way. He woke up going, I want to build stuff and conquer, and what else is it I feel? No, that's it. I don't feel much at all. Where do my feelings go? And the Lord made a presentation to him. Her. He went, she's got them. She is wired by God to be the heart of the home. Man is wired to be the head of the home. That doesn't mean he's smarter, but it does mean he's more cognitive and less manipulated by what he feels, just less. I wish I had time to elaborate on all this stuff. There's so much to it, but I've said enough. Number one, woman is physically weaker. Number two, she's emotionally deeper. That is a recipe for great and deep pain. But thirdly, it's right there in that verse. When God said in verse 16, your desire shall be to your husband, he shall rule over you. You must understand, ladies, you are wired different than men, and God wired you with one primary need emotionally, and that is to know that you are loved. And that need is both the source of all your dreams and all your greatest fears. Your mother Eve, our mother Eve became the mother of all insecurities when she ate that which was forbidden. All right, so with all of that in mind, physically weaker, emotionally deeper, wired with a need that never goes away. That need is to know that you're loved. And that fear that you won't be, or that fear that love will be withdrawn and given to someone else, is a torment that every woman knows. With that in mind, I ask you to consider how, in a culture like this one was, where John 8 happens, where a woman could be taken in adultery by some religious men, it probably didn't happen because she saw some guy's abs. Because they didn't put their abs on display, and women aren't so impressed with that anyway. All the married men here are proving that, right? We just kind of, well, you know, I won't go in there, but honestly, how did it happen? How would it? I submit this scenario to you was the most likely way this took place. Religious guys met. They came up with a strategy. They came up with a plan. They needed for this a woman. They needed a vulnerable woman that could be lured into adultery. And they know, as all men know, just compliment her. Just pretend to care. Just tell her she's special. Touch that spot in her heart. Men have been for centuries promising love, hoping to get sex. And women have been giving sex, hoping that they're going to be loved. I bet it happened then. I bet there was one of them that said, oh, I know the girl. All he has to do is tell her. She is the one that he is willing to risk everything. He's willing to risk it all. We just got to get together. They got together. Words. I submit to you that words were used. And in that private chamber, some lying religious punk succeeded in uniting himself physically, becoming one with a woman. And then the curtains are ripped open, and suddenly other men are in that sacred chamber. And she realizes, not only does he not defend her, he joins them and is given a pass. And she's being mocked by all of them. And then dragged from that place out into the daylight. The horror of that, lady. Once you think about that horror, she's not thinking about, I'm not ready to be seen. No, she's thinking, I just got used. It was a lie. It was a lie. And she's trying to process all of that. He lied to her, and she was played yet again. And now she's being used. She was used by him, and now she's being used by them, being dragged through the holy city on the way to the holy place to be thrown in front of the holiest man has ever been. Had she met him? Had she heard him? Did she hope to meet him? Surely not this way. Not on this, the day of her execution. Thrown in front of him, and then suddenly realizing, as she stands there with a broken heart, disheveled. I bet they used her hair to get her there, because that's how they do these things. And she stands there broken, disheveled, and then starts piecing together that this isn't even about her, it's about him. And that she is now being used to trap him. Now try to imagine, all you ladies, the maternal instincts, the very things that come from the image of God imparted to you. The pity that now mixes with her own shame, horror, heartbreak, as she realizes the position that now he is in. But he is not in any way shaken. Look at what John says. John is so in awe of his king. John actually uses the conjunction but. Verse 6, this they said, tempting him that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. Is that the coolest thing ever? John says, he acted like he didn't even hear them. He stoops. He just stoops. He doesn't wipe his sweat beads off, quivering hand on his own chin. He acts like he doesn't even want to look at them. Like they're not even there. He just starts writing. He goes to work. Now I'm amazed by the fact that he stoops. As if he has not come down low enough already, leaving heaven, leaving the glory, that distance is unimaginable, incomprehensible, infinite distance between heaven and earth, between God and man. Son of God condescended so low to become one of us. And as if he hadn't come far enough down already, he stoops. He stoops to a place that's actually lower than where she was, the accused. I'm going to tell you, though it's not recorded for us in the story, I know him well enough, and I think you do too, to know that he did not ignore her. He acted like they didn't say anything. He goes to writing. I assure you, he looked at her. And the look that he gave her wasn't one that said, how could you get us into this mess? It was not a look of anger, disapproval. No, I assure you, he gave her a look that said, I got this. Maybe winked. Maybe he winked. Got this. A smirk, perhaps. Something that said, now you just calm down, I got this. And he went to work with his finger. And with his finger, the good shepherd dispatched the wolves. Just his finger. Praise to his name. Hey, do you remember when he said in the context, I think it was he just cast demons out, and they said, you cast demons out by Beelzebub, the prince of demons. The Lord said, if I cast out devils by the finger of God, the finger, God doesn't even have to involve his arm. His finger. The Son of God dispatched him with his finger. And again, he stooped down. He stooped down, John said. And he wrote. Listen to verse 7. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. So who was supposed to cast the first stone according to the requirements of the law? The eyewitnesses that condemned and accused. He said, let's do it. No disagreement with Moses. Let him among you. Now let me get you got to get this straight because people preach this all the time. People say it all the time. Every time you take a stand against sin, somebody will say, let him without sin cast the first stone. That's not what the Lord said. He didn't say, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. He did not say that. He said, let him who is among you, pretending to be innocent. They, in even witnessing that sexual act, participated in it. They were not without sin. It was a setup. What is he writing on the ground? Well, check this out. We don't know. John didn't tell us, but I'll tell you what John did do. John gave us the Greek word, and I will give credit to David Guzik, who did my homework for me. As he does everybody's homework. David Guzik points out the use of a Greek word, katagraphini. Not graphene, which is like just generally writing. Katagraphini is somebody writing a charge against you. It's kind of like in modern culture when somebody breaks out their phone and they start videoing you in traffic. What are they doing? What is Karen up to? Forgive me if your name's Karen. I'm sorry what happened to your name. But what are they doing? People want to get you on video because they want to use that against you. That is kind of graffiti in written form. Whatever the Lord wrote was between him and those wolves. And so gracious is he that he kept it discreet between him and them. Can you picture them? What sayest thou? And then he starts writing. Start looking at each other. And then you gotta get around there to see what he's writing and then find somewhere else to be. Goodness, look at the time. He wrote what triggered their memory that tells them that he knows they're participants. They're guilty of the sin they want her to take the fall for. I love this story. Verse 9, after verse 8, and again he stooped down and wrote on the ground, and they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest. That's funny. They left in order of their age. Beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said to her, and I love this, don't you? He stands up, brushing the dust off, looks around, and he says to her, woman, and he says it again. I can only imagine the beauty of what she heard from him. Woman, woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, no man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. He acknowledged she got played, but she was not innocent. He said, go and sin no more. He acknowledged it as sin, but he's the same one who already said, didn't come into the world to condemn the world, that the world might have life. He said, neither do I condemn thee. Oh, you guys. He set her free. He sprung the trap they set for him, and he saved the bait. Can I just say to you, friends, we're all her. Every one of us are guilty. Yeah, we've been played, we've been manipulated, but we're guilty without a single defense. And he came to our rescue. Do you ever think about things like this? Like, what was the rest of the story? I think all of you old people will agree with me. That the old people will agree that there's a place in heaven where there's a guy named Paul Harvey doing the rest of the story. And we'll have, like, one night, it'll be her. And we'll get the rest of the story. So what happened after that? What happened? Did you move away? Did you get out of town, or did you stay there and live? What happened after that? I bet she never got played again. Could you please consider with me in closing? I'm in the negative now. Will you please consider with me that she, in the same hour that she discovered love promised was a lie from some earthly punk, some fellow sinner, she met love personified. She met love personified, who saved her with just his finger. How is she ever going to be the same? I got to believe she was never played again. Did she marry? Did she remarry? What happened? What's the rest of her life like? I don't know. I want to know. I want to know. But I strongly suspect that if she ever loved again, it was only because she recognized him in that guy. Well, there it is. There's your message this morning. Take it or leave it. Let me pray for you. Oh, Father, I thank you for sending your son. I thank you for who he is, the greatness of our King. And all of us, Lord, just like that woman, condemned, guilty, without a single defense, until you came along. Lord, I pray you'd help us to look to you continually And may our hearts be affected. May we live different because of the grace we've been shown. In the name of Christ our King, amen.